Welcome back to Voodoo Family Travels. Today we're visiting the Mollie Kathleen gold mine. Historic town of Cripple Creek. A lot of casinos. Mollie Kathleen mine, gold mine. You can go down 1,000 feet into the mine. And we'll see what we can see. We've got the little company store for the mine. Got some old equipment out here in the front. Have to see where we buy the tickets to go down into the Okay. This is like down in the mine. Oh yeah. This is like inside of the mine model. I got the little track. Ready to go on the Mollie Kathleen mine tour. We got about 25 minutes or so until the next tour, so they got the little thing in the back here, like old buildings, and it's like an old train car. And you could walk in and while you're looking around. The awning up front looks like a big miner's hat. Yeah, yes, trains and stuff. Look, the awning right here is like a miner's hat. Some other cool stuff. It's like an old dining car. Yep. A restroom in the back over here. And then a little wood burning or coal burning stove. Out the back here. Old mine shaft. That's the current operations over here.
There's no phone at the back of this.
They're like old train, but you can't go in there. I guess it's like some of the offices or something that they are currently using.
That's where you get food.
Oh, it's a little snack shop. And they have just a little table. Old car.
You actually go down the chain.
Dad, look. There's a dump truck going down the parade. Dump truck.
Yeah, so.
Active mine over here.
Oh yeah.
So these are going to be the winches in a hoist that's going to bring us down 1,000 foot. And this is a 1953 331 Hemi.
Very interesting.
This is that old egg.
The town behind us, that is 400 feet below us. You're looking at 600 feet below the level of that town. Ride down takes about 2 minutes to 6 miles per hour. Racing kind of fast for 1,000 feet, but it's actually slower than a normal elevator. Your guide today is going to be Patrick. He's very knowledgeable and knows the area very well. If you have any questions, be sure to ask him. Our guides here only work here about 6 months out of the year. They don't get paid as much as they would like working at our big mine behind us, so tips are appreciated. And please keep your fingers in the cage, because if you lose a finger, it will hurt. Now if I can have everyone stand next to their group members. So 3, 2,
Well,
2.
yeah.
So you guys?
5, 6, 5.
Yeah, the 5 of us. Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually together.
Alrighty.
Is it getting in the mine elevator to go down?
Can I have you, ma'am? Can I have you stand right here facing that way? You, ma'am? You're just gonna stand in front of her and look the same way she's facing? And you, ma'am? Can I have you stand right in front of her? It's a good thing you all know each other.
That's right.
Don't put your hands through here.
Yeah.
No hands in the cage. Good.
Why don't you have you slide this way, ma'am, if you can, get that shoulder there, I'll go right. How's everybody doing?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Whee! Whee!
Going down 1,000 feet.
Here's space at the bottom.
Feels good now.
Yeah. Cool.
No, thank you.
I don't see that. I don't see that.
I can't move, so I can't look down.
You want me to film now?
No, I'm good. I'm just filming sideways.
You can see the bottom. All the lights at the bottom. You be our guide. Usually you look at. Is there water at the bottom?
I feel something dripping on me.
Oh. No panic attacks in here, please.
It would be nice if someone didn't have their arm on my head. You're like pressuring my neck.
Yeah, it's coming to the bottom.
Coming out like sardines.
We're all family.
Was interesting.
They were all above us too.
I know. Comes the other group. Packed in like sardines in a little cage.
Good, thank you. Welcome to the Mollie Kathleen. I'm Patrick. Feel free to ask questions, take pictures whenever you like. The one thing I ask is as we're walking through, I'm going to have everyone walk in between the rails. This is the safest place to be to keep you from tripping or banging your head. And remember, this is not a museum. This is an old gold mine. You can be loud, you can laugh, we can actually have fun. You can even touch stuff if you'd like. Fair enough?
Yep.
Fair enough.
All right, we'll get started this way. Follow me.
Step in the stay in between the tracks.
Very good. So here we are, Cripple Creek, 1891. We're going to do a little hard rock mining the old-fashioned way. My job title would have been single jacker, and these are my tools for the entire day, plus 3 candles. My job is to start boring out these holes, spinning the drill steel every time so it doesn't get stuck, creating a nice round hole. And then eventually using a longer drill steel until I achieve my 4-foot depth. What are all the holes for?
Dynamite.
Yeah, I'm gonna pack them full of dynamite. You see how that gets jammed in there pretty easy. Well, eventually they realized 2 guys can drill a hole faster than 1. This method over here was known as double jacking. On the ground is the shaker. His job is to hold and rotate the drill steel. Up top, the striker with a heavier sledgehammer. But they would have been working in conditions similar to this. Good luck hitting the head of that drill steel every time.
Ouch.
Yeah.
You swing and miss, hit your buddy in the shoulder. You're switching places about every 30 minutes, so you better hope he's your buddy. There's going to be a little payback coming your way. This guy over here, this is Bob. He was known as a tenderfoot, or the new guy. You notice his fancy clothes. He just showed up to the top of the mountain looking for work. And they would send the new guys right down into the hole, do some of the menial tasks such as bending all the rails. And since the lighting was such a concern down here, especially for safety, they came up with the carbide lamp. The bottom's filled with carbide crystals, the top's filled with water. When you release the water onto the carbide, it creates a gas called acetylene. Let that gas build up, strike the flint, and they have a nice bright light down here. Another advantage of the carbide lamp is the fact that it actually consumes less oxygen than a candle. These bigger versions were meant to hang up on the walls. They'd last about 2 hours. Then they came out with smaller ones for their hard hats. Those would last about 45 minutes. Problem there was you'd have a 6-inch flame sticking out of your forehead. And if you were to bend over and stand up too fast, the flame could wrap around your helmet and burn off your eyebrows. Or burn off your beard.
Oh no.
You notice how our tenderfoot Bob doesn't have any eyebrows or a beard. Always spot those new guys in town, no eyebrows. And don't forget about Bob, things are going to get worse for him as the tour continues.
Bob hasn't seen the progression of Bob.
You guys want to slide up this way, create a little more space? There we go. Once that dynamite goes off, you end up with a pile of this back here. They called it muck. And this gentleman named Jack was known as a mucker. His job was to fill 2 of these carts with a shovel every hour, or he was fired. And there were plenty of guys on the surface waiting to take his place. They started putting down metal plates before they blasted, muck plates. They figured it'd be easier to scoop it up off the metal plate versus the rough ground. But I think we all know what happens when you rub a metal shovel on a metal plate. And they never knew if all the dynamite had detonated for sure. A lot of accidents down here early on.
Wow.
There was a guy that lived over in Victor, about 4 miles from here. He worked here as a mucker, but he couldn't keep pace with the other guys. And that was due to the fact he was a little too tall to be working down here. Originally, all these tunnels were only 3 by 5. He ended up getting fired from 2 mines in 2 weeks. And then he heard about a boxing match they had coming up 4th of July weekend, so he decided he'd take on the town champ. And he ended up winning and then pursuing his boxing career. And our mucker named Jack turned out to be Mr. Jack Dempsey. He went on to be heavyweight champion of the world for many years, dominated the 1920s. And he worked there for a few weeks. I think he made the right career move there, though. So here we have what they called a mucking machine. You folks can slide up this way. All of their equipment was powered off of compressed steam originally. It's compressed air now for our demonstrations. And I am going to show you folks a lot of the equipment down here today. It is all very loud, so feel free to cover your ears. Let me get this one turned on real quick. So now you get to choose between that shovel and this. Let me know what you think. Any takers on the shovel?
I'll take that thing.
Now one guy can fill this cart in less than 2 minutes. So big improvement on their efficiency. They didn't have this type of equipment until around the turn of the century, so they were doing everything by hand for that first 10 years or so. We'll keep moving along this way.
It's your cocaine, Miss Cindy.
Once that mucker gets his cart full, here it is, a 1-ton ore cart. 2,000 pounds of rock. They had to push these out of here by hand, all the way back to the shaft.
Wow.
All of the rails were put in at approximately a 1% grade downwards back towards the shaft. That way you push the heavy load downhill, push the empty carts back up. And then they used donkeys down here for a long time to drag these around. I'll talk a little bit more about the donkeys later. If we were to process this entire cart, how much gold do you think we'd have to find in order to be barely profitable and continue mining in this area?
5 ounces.
Anybody else?
Probably a few pounds.
A little bit less than what you were thinking, about 1 ounce per ton. It's a pretty good bare bones ratio. A piece about the size of a dime is all you're going to get out of this cart after it's processed.
Wow.
And that's if you're lucky in some cases. But there were also some cases where they were finding up to 4,000 ounces of gold per ton. So it does drastically vary depending on what you find down here. Eventually I will show you exactly what they were looking for underground. You ready to see some dynamite?
Sure.
All right, good answer. Come on in.
All explosions.
So this here is the 1905 drifter drill. This was a 2-man operation. This thing weighs 150 pounds. You can slide up and down this guide bar. You can swivel it left and right. You can pivot it up and down. So now, in an 8-hour shift, 2 guys are expected to be able to drill this entire blast pattern. Get it packed full down out. Now they're advancing only 6 feet per shift. Still a very slow process even with the drills. I'll show you the drifter drill here real quick. This one's pretty loud. What'd you say? Yeah, imagine that all day. They didn't have much for hearing protection. They were just using a piece of newspaper or a piece of cotton. Eventually, when filtered cigarettes came out, they would tear the filters off, use that for their hearing protection. The reason they drilled their holes in a specific pattern is because they want the dynamite to detonate in a specific sequence. And in order to achieve that sequence, all the detonation cords were cut to different lengths. The hole in the middle here is left empty. That's called the reliever hole. That gave the rock somewhere to go after that initial blast, which would have been this box area here in the middle. And the top goes off, the sides. Down here were called the knees. Last and most important are the ones on the bottom. Those are called the kickers. Those holes are drilled downward at a 30-degree angle. They would detonate last, lifting all that crushed granite up and out of this area and hopefully land right on those muck plates. Then you can maybe clean it up. Now after they lit the detonation cords, obviously they'd have to run for cover. But they didn't want to go too far because their other job was to try and listen and count the blasts, make sure that they all went off. If they didn't get to that number they were expecting to hear, they'd give this to Bob, our tenderfoot back there. He's the one that gets to come in and fish out the undetonated dynamite. A lot of dangerous situations they had to come back into. Another problem with dynamite is the fact that under 55 degrees it becomes very unstable. Down here is a constant 48 to 50 degrees year-round. So the company DuPont, they were the ones supplying the dynamite, they came up with this, the stick warmer. Pack this full of dynamite, set it next to the wood stove up on the surface, heat it up to about 80 degrees. That would give you around a 2-hour window to get it back down here, packed into the holes and set off before it was too unstable to be handling again. The stick warmer was very important for a long time. And eventually they came up with a better drill. This is the 1940 jack leg drill. This one's unavailable for demonstration, but I'll show you how it works. This hydraulic leg extends. So now I can raise it up and down, pivot it left and right. This was a one-man operation. This drill hammers as well as rotates the bit simultaneously, so it's a little more efficient. Now I'd be expected to drill that entire blast pattern by myself in about 2 hours. Then around 1950 they stopped using the dynamite. Started using what's called ANFO. Looks like this here in the little jar. It's a combination of fertilizer and diesel fuel, ammonium nitrate. It's the same stuff that was used in the Oklahoma City bombing, so you can imagine how powerful it is. But it was cheaper than the dynamite, and they didn't have to worry about the temperatures down here. Now I'm going to play a quick recording of what it would have sounded like as those dynamite rounds were going off. It's not very loud. I want everyone to try and count in your heads how many individual blasts you think you hear. Let me know what you think. I'll tell you right now, the answer is not 10. It's going to get started in 2 seconds. You think
14.
11?
15.
9.
25.
That's 15.
25? You've got the most potential so far. 23 is the correct answer.
Wow. Great.
Good job.
Hard to keep track of, especially if you were hard of hearing. But if you were doing it on a daily basis, it's a lot easier to count out those blasts when you're expecting to hear 23. I left you folks in the dark. I could have told you that that blast pattern back there is actually called a 23-hole burn. And I would have given away the answer. But good job, sir. I only get a couple people a month to hit it right on the head. It is hard to do. And then obviously nowadays we have much more sophisticated detonation cores. All that timing is much more synchronized, more reliable. Most companies are still using that ANFO mix today. That's what they're using next door at the open pit mine. But it's a dangerous process no matter what you're working with. That is an active gold mine up there. I'll talk about them here a little bit more later on. Yeah, it is. A lot of people guess it to be snow. I'm not sure how that would be possible down here, especially in June, but it's actually Epsom salt. Just naturally, just through the rock, you can see there is a lot
Take
of
a
it.
bath.
There's even more in other areas. They never tried to harvest any of the salt because of all the other minerals that leach out with it, things including mercury. So they just left the salt alone. And just so you know, that Epsom salt is a powerful laxative. So if you are going to touch the walls, please do not lick your fingers till we get back to the surface. That's your fair warning. We still have about 40 minutes to go down here. So all of these tunnels we're walking through are called crosscuts and drifts. A crosscut is a straight shot from one working location to another. And then a drift follows the goal, so you never know where that's going to lead you to. They're all connected to the vertical shafts in this district for airflow and for safety. All of the different mining companies were sharing the tunneling system down here for the ease of the operations for everyone's sake, but more importantly for that airflow. I feel that draft coming in here from behind me. Now if you were to add up all the tunneling in the district being 36 square miles up to the surface, and keep in mind that this mine has 5 levels, and there's a mine over in Victor that goes down over 3,200 feet with 17 different levels.
Wow.
So if you were to add it all up, how many miles of tunneling do you think are in this area?
125.
1,500.
There is definitely a comma involved.
Okay.
They had over 1,800 miles of tunneling here in the first 10 years. That was all sledgehammers by candlelight. By the time it was all said and done, geologists have estimated close to 10,000 miles of tunneling in the district.
Wow.
Hard to believe, especially at 6 feet at a time. Most of it has been eliminated by the open pit mine. They take up about 3/4 of the original district, so a lot of it has been carved out over the years. Now I'm going to show you down here exactly what they were looking for underground. Has anyone seen any gold yet?
Yes, everywhere.
Yeah? Gold nuggets laying around? Are you going to tell me if you find a gold nugget?
Maybe.
Maybe. I'd be willing to split it with you. Don't forget I'm the one getting you out of here today.
That's right.
Underground, they weren't looking for that typical gold color. That's what happens after the ore has been processed. Underground, they were looking for purple. This color here. That's fluorite. And the gold is trapped in the fluorite in this region. When they were down here, they were chasing what they called gold veins, but they're purple. They look like this. See it running at that angle there. Fluorite veins can be anywhere from a few inches wide to 100 feet wide. And this vein right here could dead end 6 feet in, it could run on for miles, you never know. When they would find the veins running vertically, now they have to do a different technique, stope mining, S-T-O-P-E. You're mining vertically, creating these raises known as stopes. There would have been a man up here working on this plank. Here he is. Now he has a different type of drill, a stoper drill. He's going to drill the holes and pack the dynamite above his head. When they set it off, they're going to let gravity do a lot of the work. It's going to bring all the crushed ore down below here, fall on the shelf. Instead of having a bunch of muckers come in and clean it up with shovels, you use the slusher bucket here to drag the ore to the next opening. Gravity takes over again, slides right down the chutes into the ore carts. And now the steam-powered tram takes it back to the shaft so it can get up to the surface for the processing. If you folks want to slide in this way so you can see a little better, I'll show you the slusher bucket real quick, and you'll see how much easier this would be than a bunch of guys with shovels. Simple design, but very efficient for what they were doing. And they're also cutting back on manpower, which was always the objective of the owners and still is today. And then that little tram, originally filled with compressed steam, eventually compressed air. It was Mollie Kathleen's son who invented this. He was one of the surveyors in town. His name was Perry. These are called Perry trams. This is what replaced our donkeys down here. One day a guy named Teddy Roosevelt came to town to check on the mining operations. He realized what kind of conditions the donkeys were working in. Once they got down here, they never left. They lived the rest of their lives underground. They ended up blind and deaf due to the conditions. So President Roosevelt put an end to that. That forced him to come up with something else, so Perry invented his tram. Now you can push or pull 10 of those fully loaded ore carts at a time, versus 1 cart per donkey. The donkeys were released to the surface, and there's a herd that still roams Cripple Creek today. They are the descendants of those working donkeys. They have their own winter pasture, and in the summer months they're released into the town. They just roam freely. You can buy donkey food at all the gift shops. They all have names. I heard one of them has his own Instagram account. It's a little ridiculous nowadays. They're pretty spoiled, but their ancestors earned their keep down here for a long time. The donkeys were very important.
What about the
So go ahead.
the family members of Mollie Kathleen? Are they still around?
No, I'm not sure what happened to her family lineage. She only had 2 children, and neither one of them had kids. So we will meet Mollie here eventually, and I'll tell you more about her story.
So he was more worried about the donkey's conditions than he was about the men's condition?
Yeah, well, the guys were coming down here on their own free will.
That's true, I know, we live in
And here you can see one of our Perry trams, commonly referred to as an air donkey. This wouldn't shoot. This goes all the way up to the level above us, about 300 feet. That's how the crushed ore gets sent right down into the ore cart. Then the air donkey takes it back to the shaft. I brought my little boy down here with me last summer. He was only 5 at the time. He guessed this spot right here to be moldy cauliflower. It's a pretty good guess. What are we seeing? What's the green stuff, you think?
Lime? That's something in lime.
Mercury's going to be maroon.
Okay.
Some people guess it to be emerald, I wish.
See something?
Kryptonite, maybe?
No.
Copper, just like
Copper.
a penny will turn green.
Yes.
Oxidized copper.
Yes.
The rusty color is going to be iron. Yellow is sulfur. All of these different minerals seep through the rock along with all the moisture from the rain and the snow. And that's what creates these little structures above our heads, stalactites. A stalactite will hang tight from the top, and a stalagmite might trip you. That's an easy way to remember the difference. Eventually, they will join in the middle. That's called a column. You can see one back here. It's been growing since the 1960s when they shut down the operation all the way in the back.
It's right in the middle.
Yep.
That's also a lot better of a way to remember than school taught us. Right? I don't even remember the difference from school.
Down here, we don't call it the ceiling. It's known as the back. Imagine we were standing in the belly of a whale right now. That would be the whale's back. The walls are called the ribs. And then the floor should have been the belly, but they just called it the floor. We are going to see some pretty cool copper stalactites here in a minute. You guys can go ahead. We're just going to go into that next room. Back to the guy in the diagram. This is what he was using. The stoper drill. This thing weighs 92 pounds, also known as the Widowmaker. And it wasn't because he was working 50 feet in the air on a plank. It's because he was drilling above his head all day and breathing in the dust. No respiratory protection of any kind. They didn't realize that the granite down here contains silica, and he would eventually develop silicosis of the lungs. The guys who were operating the early version of these drills were lucky to make it to the age of 30. So to try and prevent that lung damage, they came up with this, the jack tank. It's filled with water. It'd be hooked up to a newer version of the stoper drill. Now the blacksmith made him a new drill steel that has a hole all the way down the middle of it. So as they're drilling, the jack tank's pumping water through the bit, preserving the life of the bit as well as turning all that dust into mud, hopefully saving their lungs a little bit. Now picture yourself doing this all day, standing up on that plank we saw back there for 8 hours in the dark. Any volunteers? No? This drill is what enabled them to do the vertical mining. And now we're going to see what a stope looks like when it's completely carved out.
How much did they get paid?
We're talking about those wages right now. I want everyone to be able to see at the same time. This stope took about 6 months to complete. There's no noise, eyes up. That runs at that angle for over 800 feet, all the way up to the 200 level, intersecting every level in between. The higher you go, the wider it gets. It's about 90 feet wide towards the top, carving out a fluorite vein. In this area, they were pulling out approximately 2,200 ounces of gold per ton. This changed the dynamics of the Mollie Kathleen overnight. That guy up there on the left, he was known as a stope rat. He was the highest paid guy down here, $4 a day. Muckers were getting $3 a day. And they also had boys working down here starting at age 8, 50 cents a day. They were the errand boys. They'd run down to the tool room, grab this guy, new drill steels or tools, whatever he needed. The boys would have to climb these series of ladders to take them that equipment. Now remember, that drill weighs 92 pounds. You gotta get it up there somehow. Every time you go to blast, you gotta get it down out of the way and then back up there again to drill new holes. So to try and make that whole process a little faster and safer, here we have the tugger. This would bring all those tools right up to them. See how much faster and safer that would be. Here's some of those copper stalactites I had mentioned. Those are pretty cool. Alright, are we ready to go for a ride on an air donkey? Yeah. Of course. We'll have everyone go in front of the equipment. Go ahead and pick out a seat. I'll get this thing refilled for us.
About to ride on the air donkey.
All right, everybody ready?
Yep.
Yep.
Let's hear your best train whistle.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any questions about what's going on in this area? They didn't have much for plumbing down here. They were using the empty dynamite boxes as the toilet.
Oh,
Whose job do you think it was to haul those to the surface at the end of the day?
The kids.
8-year-olds.
Boys, yeah? 50 cents a day. Now, if you look over your right shoulder as you go around this corner, you'll see another crosscut. This one leads over to the Black Diamond Mine, about a half mile from where we're at. Some of the smaller companies didn't have their own shaft. They would lease a shaft from the larger companies. So the Black Diamond would have to haul their ore half mile through this tunnel to get it over here and up to the surface. That's the whole purpose of those crosscuts as well as airflow. Welcome to the tool room. The blacksmiths were very valuable to the mining operation. They were the one forging all of these tools, forging and sharpening all of the drill steels that they were burning through. Another thing the blacksmith came up with is that little bike on the track. That's called the boss's bike. When the bigwigs come down here to check on their workers, they're not going to want to walk around mile after mile in the dark trying to find them. So the blacksmith made a little bike. But he intentionally made it loud so they could hear the bosses coming. Now I need to send the tram backwards for the next group. Feel free to jump on the bike, take some pictures. Look around at some of these tools. I'm going to get this thing out of our way real quick.
Okay.
Sit on it. Huh?
Lacey, sit up there.
The reason for that was the price of gold was stuck at $35 an ounce for several years. It was no longer profitable. All these underground mines were abandoned. Eventually, we came up with all the excavation equipment we have nowadays, so this technique was abandoned. What they do now is the open pit. They take these huge earth movers and just carve out massive holes. And you end up finding all the gold you're not down here tunneling around looking for. With this being an outdated technique, they've done nothing but the tours here at the Mollie Kathleen since 1961. The open pit on the surface, it's owned by a company called Newmont. They're headquartered out of Denver. They are the largest gold mining company in the world right now. And that is one of the more productive mines in the U.S. currently. They're averaging $1.2 million over there every single day. So they're still finding plenty of gold and silver in this area, and that's why they keep digging. They would love to get their hands on this property, start gutting it out tomorrow if they could. Imagine how much gold could still be in between all these levels.
Yeah.
Hopefully the owners of the tour, it's been privately owned by a local family since 1988, will continue to resist some of Newmont's huge offers. And that way this will continue to be a tour forever. Otherwise it will end up looking like next door up there, just a huge hole in the ground. We'll see what happens in the future, money talks, and Newmont has plenty of it to throw around.
Especially for $1 million a day.
Yeah, they own mines all over the world. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. That's one of their smaller operations. They're actually considering selling it.
Wow.
Are we ready to see some real gold?
Yes.
All right, we'll let you gentlemen take the lead. Just head down there, push on that gate, let yourself in. This room that we're in, this was part of an expansion of the tour they did in the early 1970s. They wanted to carve in a mineral display room here, but they also wanted this space to replicate what's known as a VUG, V-U-G. It's a natural cavity in the mountain, left behind from all the volcanic activity in this region. It's 1 in a million chances you'd ever find a VUG while you're down here tunneling. Well, the Crescent Mine over here stumbled into one. 1903, they blasted into a room similar to this, but about twice the size. They had no idea it was there. And jackpot, it was filled with pure gold. That's what that display on the bottom is supposed to represent. The volcanic activity, all the hot magma separated the gold from all the other minerals. Gold can withstand much more heat than anything else. It separated and drained into that VUG and sat there for thousands of years, until they found it in 1903. They worked on that VUG for a month. Hand-picked miners, worked under armed guard, going through a strip search after every shift. They ended up pulling out 60,000 troy ounces of pure gold.
Wow.
With today's prices, that would be approximately $160 million. Not too bad for a month. This little rock right here, this came out of that VUG. That's what they found. You can see those chunks of pure gold. They were literally just scraping it off the walls.
Wow.
Not sure if they told the owners right away when they found it. And then there's Mollie, there she is. Mollie Kathleen Gorton. Born in Springfield, Illinois, grew up in Iowa. Her son was the surveyor who invented our tram. Her husband was a mining attorney. The gold rush is what brought him out here. And eventually Mollie ended up becoming the first female to ever register a gold claim in her own name here in North America. She owned it until she passed away in 1917. And she picked a pretty good spot because the Mollie Kathleen was one of the more productive mines in this area during that time. And that's another reason why Newmont would love to buy us out. They know for a fact there's plenty of gold still here. So what are you going to do with all that purple rock when you find it? How do you turn purple into gold?
Flesh it out, squeeze through you folks here.
You melt it. Yeah, you got to process it out with chemicals or heat. Early on, they were just using heat, about 2,000 degrees. It's going to end up looking like this piece down here, letter G. You can see all these little gold bubbles. This was paused halfway through the roasting process. If you were to continue to roast this, eventually all of the ore will burn off and you're left with nothing but pure gold. The gold's the only thing that can survive that kind of heat. Or you have to use a chemical solution that includes sodium cyanide. That leaches the gold out of the fluoride. That is the process they use nowadays at the open pit leach fields. They're able to process thousands of tons at a time. And then heat still is the final step. It gets sent to the refinery in Denver, smelted down, and you're left with nothing but pure liquid gold. You pour it into whatever shape you want, typically a bar or above.
Like it was new.
We used to have a gold bar in there. The owner decided to take that home last year. 1 bar is worth $240K nowadays. So.
Wow.
I don't know where he lives either. All right, I'm going to let everybody pick out their own little sample piece of some Rocky Mountain gold ore to take home for a souvenir. Please don't get too excited. You're not going to find any gold nuggets in here either. You're looking for one of these sparkly rocks you can take home for a memory from your trip to the mall. The sparkly stuff is iron pyrite, also known as fool's gold. Not very valuable, but it does make for a nice souvenir.
Shine a little bit.
you dig around a little bit, you might find some purple fluoride in here. This all comes from this level. I found purple in here earlier today. You dig any deeper, I'm not sure what you'll find. I found a fake fingernail in here last year.
Nice.
Dig at your own risk. Go ahead, help yourself. We're gonna keep moving along here in a minute.
Shit other stuff down there.
Get your tools out, start digging. These are sharp.
I've been training for this.
You've been training for this. You can get a job here, yeah. All right, they've got their samples. Just don't do it.
I know.
I'm picky about my rocks, okay? Leave me alone.
So was it on Tuesdays a day or 2 of an hour? What was it?
Two carts an hour.
Did y'all get a piece?
Oh, it's gonna be
They said, don't look down if you're afraid of heights, crossing the metal gates. I'll give them a shot.
That's that whole view, just the one that's all the warhammer. That's all where all the warhammer grass will come from. And all these others.
So if you look up this direction here, you'll see another one of our stopes. This one goes up 230 feet, carving out another fluoride vein. That vein structure continued down from here, but they were already on the bottom level of this mine. So instead of going down and creating a whole nother level so you can mine vertically on the vein, they're just gonna mine straight down on top of it, creating this area down here known as a winze, W-I-N-Z-E. What you can see down there is about 40 feet. This goes down 120 feet total. This is one of the last areas they worked on when they shut down in the early 60s. But now you're doing another technique. You're not pulling the ore out of the tunnel and you're not relying on gravity in the stope mining. You're just pulling it straight up out of the hole. Similar to what they had to do to carve out all the shafts. Before they had the steam-powered equipment, they would use this rope device, the original sinking bucket. The miner would put his tools in the bucket and then sit in it. And there'd be a guy on each side cranking them down with those handles. And then you use that little bucket to bring the ore up out of the hole. But you can only do so much with manpower. Eventually they got a steam-powered hoist. More power means bigger bucket. Now you're able to send down more equipment than 2 guys at once. They would stand on the top lip here, 1 on each side. Hopefully you weigh about the same. Grab onto that cable and down you go. And then you use the bigger bucket to extract the ore out of the hole. But when this is full of rock, it weighs 1,000 pounds. How are you going to dump it out and get it into the ore carts? It'd be impossible to try and do that by hand. So they came up with this, the apron. I'm going to have everyone slide onto the other side of the metal crate, please, and I'll demonstrate how they would dump these buckets 1,000 pounds at a time.
Interesting.
Pretty sick? Yeah, I'm not sure who invented the apron, but I hope you got a raise. Well, that's how we're getting out of here today. Load up, you're first.
Yeah.
Imagine riding on that thing.
Yeah.
There were guys getting hurt trying to get them into position, lack of vision, lack of communication. At the end of the tour, I'll talk about the safety protocol they came up with to try and prevent some of those accidents. We'll keep moving this way for now. So the lamp down here, it's called the miner's safety lamp. It's burning kerosene, but it can't burn kerosene without oxygen. And that's what it's doing, checking our oxygen levels down here for us. We don't have any explosive gases like methane that you'd find in other mines around the world. But we do have CO2 we have to deal with and can be very dangerous. It's a heavy, dense gas that will start at the floor and fill up these cavities. Odorless, tasteless, you would just pass out and eventually asphyxiate. Early on, they would bring a bird in a cage with them down here. You set the cage down on the ground. If the bird died, you knew the oxygen levels were changing to an extent that it's time for you to get out for the day. We have electronic sensors nowadays that monitor the conditions down here, but they're not necessarily 100% reliable because they run on electricity or batteries. The fire is 110% reliable. It will never lie to you. If you can't get a flame to burn low to the ground, you know things are changing and it's time to get out. That's why you should always keep a lighter in your pocket, so you can check those oxygen levels no matter where you are throughout the mine, in case you don't have one of those lamps with you. Sometimes I do use this to try and scare little kids back at the dynamite display, but it's mostly for safety. It's the barometric pressure that changes our conditions down here. When the barometer drops, the CO2 levels rise. So it is something you have to monitor 24/7 when you have people underground. It can change drastically in just a matter of a few hours. So before everything was connected for the natural airflow, they would have to force air down here. There's a large fan on the other side of that wall. Our shaft is right there, so we know we're getting fresh air from the surface. The fan would pump air through these socks or something similar to them, all the way down wherever they were working, giving them fresh air to breathe as well as help settle all the dust after they detonate. Eventually everything became connected, so there is no reason to force air down here any longer. This area was originally the donkey stables. That's where they kept them penned up when they weren't working. They were always close to the shafts for that airflow, so in case you had a day with bad air, you wouldn't have to come down and rescue the donkeys. They could survive right here close to the shaft. They were eliminated from the equation, so they just converted this to their own little lunchroom. This is where they would come back, take a break, and take advantage of that fresh air. They called this the miner's diner. I'm sure that was going on down here too. I'm sure there were a lot of unsafe practices for that first 30 years. MSHA wasn't involved up here until 1920. So, and this is how they would communicate with the hoistmen. They didn't have any walkie-talkies or anything. And you also had miners coming from around the world speaking different languages. So to try and prevent some of the miscommunication and accidents that were happening, this system of miner safety bells was developed here in this district. Every time I pull one of those ropes, the hoistman up top gets a bell as well as a light. He might need that light in his peripheral because he's probably hard of hearing. So through a different sequence of rings, I can tell him exactly where we are and where we're trying to go. I tell him when to go up, when to go down, and when to stop. Relatively simple. If you go to an underground mine anywhere in the world today, you'll see this exact same sign, just in different languages. But the sequence of rings is universal amongst underground miners. And it was all developed here in Cripple Creek. All right, picture time. You guys want to get together with your individual groups underneath our sign there? I'll take a photo for you. We're going to head back to the surface here shortly.
Ready to go back?
That's where they put the concrete.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty cool photo.
The top skip first, the top group that was on first is the group that. That's where they put the concrete.
All right, top skip only. Come on through. You guys can go ahead and reload. Wait.
Go back to the surface.
Does it go up as fast as it came down?
It's the same revolutions. Yeah.
Same
Some people
revolutions.
seem to think it feels faster, but
Uh-huh.
it's not as long. It doesn't take as long to stop
it up.
going up as it does going down.
Uh-huh.
You shave off a few seconds, but it's the same amount of revolutions per minute. And then you see the ladders over here on the side.
Uh-huh.
That's the emergency exit if the power was to go out.
Oh, no, thank you.
You could climb your way out of here if you had to.
How much slow down?
That's the extended tour, no extra charge.
Are these original elevators?
So the skip that we're riding in is fabricated in the 80s for the tour. But the shaft that we're going down was carved out in the late 1890s.
Wow.
The original shaft was on the other side of the property. It only went down 200 feet. And then when they got better drills, they back here went down 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
And it was a brand new cable last year, if that makes you feel more comfortable. A little late for some of these questions, but
They can still pop at any second.
you do have an emergency brake above your head. Those those metal spikes are tied into the cable like similar to a trailer brake. So if something did happen, those spikes kick out to the side, dig into the shaft, keep it from free falling.
Right.
It's cold in here, you know, down there.
Yeah. Safety first. $100 feet to go.
100 feet to go, all right.
Heal ourselves out.
Go ahead and put your hard hats back in the bin.
Very sadly, after we visited the mine, there was a tragic accident and the tour guide was killed.